Hello, friends. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name's Sherry.
Sherry Beth, what episode is this?
Number 20.
We have done 20 episodes in a row without missing one.
We're amazing.
Unbelievable. So for those of you guys who may have missed last week's episode, which was the first episode in the month of May, we've decided that this whole month, since there are 5 Saturdays in May, we're going to focus on one specific topic. And Sherry Beth, what topic is that?
Relationships.
So every podcast during the month of May is going to be something that has to do with relationships. Now, these aren't like just romantic relationships. Our goal for this isn't just like husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, but these are all interpersonal relationships.
Yep.
Right? Anything that has to do with another person. And we started the month last week with communication.
Yeah.
Kind of like the foundation, at least for Sherry and I. It's hard to think of having any good relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, without a solid foundation of communication.
Yep.
And we're kind of building on that foundation this week, and we're going to be talking about the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Now, some of you may be familiar with that. This may be new terminology for others. We're going to explain what those are here in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit about why we decided to do this episode second.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is that in some ways it's similar to communication. Because with communication, it's important to understand not only how you communicate, but how the person you're with or your friends or your spouse, whoever it is, how they communicate as well.
And how they receive communication.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because a lot of misunderstanding happens, a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration happens when you say something and it's received differently.
Yep.
Or when you receive something differently as well. And so in the same way, the love languages are about understanding yourself, how you receive love, how you give love, how you want to receive love, but then also how the people around you do that as well.
Yep.
Because I think just like communication, sometimes you can be saying a lot of words, yet the person you're with may not be receiving any of them.
Yeah.
With love, it can be the same way. You can be doing a lot of things and they're just kind of falling flat because you're not doing them in such a way that like the person you're with is wired.
Right.
Right? And so that's kind of the whole idea behind the 5 love languages. And I think it started as a book. Is that right, Sherry?
I think so, yeah.
By a guy, I think it's Gary Chapman, wrote the book. And the whole idea is that there are, and keeping in mind, like this is trying to simplify a something like love, right? It's like break it down
into 5 pieces.
Not exactly quite going to fit perfectly.
Right.
However, we're trying to just like get an idea.
Yeah.
And to me, I will compare this a little bit to the Enneagram, because I would say the 5 love languages has been almost as helpful as the Enneagram to me.
Yeah, I think so.
In dealing not just with each other in our relationship, but with others as well. It's helpful to know how they're wired, helpful to know how they receive love, all of that kind of stuff. And so, first I'll just start with telling you kind of what the 5 love languages are.
Yeah.
There's a free test that you can take, and I'll put that in the description here. You can also just Google 5 love languages free test, and you'll get it. And there are a number of tests you can take, at least on the site we found. There's a test for like spouses. There's a test for like students. There's a test for lots of different things.
Kids, singles, and yep.
And so we decided to take the singles test. Now you may be wondering why we did that. Well, my thought is that if we took the marriage test, the results it gave us as far as like descriptions would all be very marriage focused.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really important to remember that the vast majority of relationships we have in our lives are not marriage and spouse.
Right. I have one relationship that is with my spouse, and every other relationship in my life is a not spouse.
That's exactly right. And so it's like really important that
Yep.
that we understand how this works in the context of all of our relationships.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what we're doing. So that's why we took the singles one, the singles and ready to mingles,
Right.
5 love languages. And so you kind of take this test just with a lot of personality tests, and it gives you your results.
Yep.
And the way it did for us is it ranked like the number one, the highest thing that we need, or the highest like love language, down to the last one.
Yeah, and it's in percentages, so they all add up to 100.
Exactly. So the 5 love languages are physical touch, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and words of affirmation. Now, what I want to do is actually go through and sort of read for you guys what each of those are. Obviously, they're sort of self-explanatory, but I just wanted to sort of give you a better idea of what we're talking about.
Yep.
And then, Sherry, we're going to go through and we're going to tell them how we scored.
Yes, we are.
We're going to tell them, was there anything in our score that surprised us?
Yeah.
But we're also going to tell them, like, how in the world, because our scores to me are very, very interesting.
Yes.
And our scores have caused some issues.
Yes.
Our scores have caused some, like, wrestling and trials and just lots of different things like that. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to start with words of affirmation. I'm going to tell you what the descriptions of these are. Words of affirmation. It says, this love language expresses love with words that build up your partner. Verbal compliments don't have to be complicated. The shortest and simplest praises can be the most effective. Words mean a lot if your partner has this love language. Compliments and an I love you can go a long way. On the other hand, negative or insulting comments can hurt your partner, and it could take them longer to forgive than others. So that is words of affirmation. Now, acts of service. Your partner might have this love language if their motto is actions speak louder than words. This love language expresses itself by doing things that you know your spouse would like. And again, this blog that I'm reading, obviously written for like marriage relationships.
Right.
So when you hear like spouse, partner, that kind of stuff, just like think friend, think other people around you.
Yep, exactly.
Right. This love language expresses itself by doing things that you know your spouse would like. Cooking a meal, doing the laundry, picking up a prescription are acts of service. They require some thought, time, and effort. All of these things should be done with positivity and with your partner's ultimate happiness in mind to be considered an expression of love. Actions out of obligation or with a negative tone are something else entirely. Mm-hmm. The next one is receiving gifts. This love language isn't necessarily materialistic. It just means that a meaningful or thoughtful gift makes your partner feel loved and appreciated. Something as simple as picking up a pint of their favorite ice cream after a long work week can make a huge impact. This is different than acts of service, where you show affection by performing actions to help your partner. Number 4, quality time. This love language is all about undivided attention. No television, no smartphones, or any other distractions. If this is your partner's primary language, they don't just want to be included during this period of time, they want to be the center of your attention. They want their partners to look at them and them only. This doesn't mean that you don't curl up on the couch to watch Netflix or HBO. It just means that you need to make sure to dedicate time together without all of those distractions. That will help them feel comforted in the relationship. Every time you cancel a date, postpone time together, or aren't present during your time together, it can be extremely hurtful to your partner, as it can make them feel like you care more about other things or activities than them. And then the last one, physical touch. To people with this love language, nothing is more impactful than the physical touch of their partner. They aren't necessarily into over-the-top PDA, but they do feel more connected and safe in a relationship by holding hands, kissing, hugging, etc. If physical touch is your partner's primary love language, they will feel unloved without physical contact. All of the words and gifts in the world won't change that. They want to feel you close by, not just emotionally, but physically. Sherry Beth, those are the 5.
The 5.
So again, we each took the test.
Yep.
Sherry Beth, I want you to go first, and I want you to start with your highest and give us your percentage, and then like work your way down to lowest.
Okay.
Okay?
So my highest at 30% was receiving gifts.
Did that surprise you?
No.
Okay. You looking at these 5, you would have guessed that was your highest?
I would have guessed, yes.
Okay.
These next 3 are very close in percentage.
Interesting.
Which did actually kind of surprise me. So the next one is 23% acts of service. I got a tie, both at 20% for quality time and words of affirmation.
Huh.
And then 7% physical touch.
So physical touch, far and away your lowest.
Yes.
The other 3, right in the middle, very, very close.
Very close. And really all, like the top 4 are pretty close. I mean, there's really only 10% between the highest and the other 2 that are tied. So, pretty close, really. Do
you feel, as somebody who, well, you know what, let me give my scores first, okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to cough. I'm better now.
Oh, okay.
So let me give you mine.
Yep.
Starting with my highest, no surprise, 35% physical touch.
Yeah.
And then the next one, 32% words of affirmation. So my top two, far and away the big.
Yeah.
In fact, my number 3 drops all the way down to 19% with quality time.
Mm-hmm.
Receiving gifts is 10%. Acts of service, 3%.
Yeah.
Like,
so those just literally mean nothing to you.
Like, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
that. Like, I have a super wide range, but like my top two, far and away, physical touch, words of affirmation. My lowest by far, acts of service.
Yeah.
Sherry Beth, yours much more balanced than mine.
Much more balanced.
Do you feel
aside from physical touch?
Aside from physical touch, and so we're going to talk about that. Let's just talk about this right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you, if you're keeping notes, first off, if you are weird,
you do you.
You do you, whatever you need to do. You may have noticed that my top two are Sherry's lowest two.
Yeah.
And Sherry's lowest two, and Sherry's top two are my lowest two.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recipe for disaster, certainly.
Yes.
So
yes. I mean, it can be.
It certainly can be.
Yep.
And it has been.
And it has been.
And so we're going to talk about that. In fact, Sherry and I had a long conversation before we even started recording about how honest we want to be in this podcast. And we decided we're just going to be pretty darn honest. We're not going to tell everything, but we are going to just give you a peek into the reality of our life.
You get to see behind the scenes.
You get to see
of the vlogs.
You get to see behind the scenes of the vlogs for sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Sherry, so I want to start with kind of some easy questions.
Yep.
Those top 4 for you, which are pretty simple.
Yep.
Any of those things, you feel loved, right?
Yes.
What do you feel, not just when I do those things, when friends do those things? Like during this last season when you've been sick, people have done those things. Like, how does it make you feel when somebody reacts with your love languages?
I feel seen, I feel known, and I really think that is kind of what everybody wants. Like, even more than, like a marriage love, I think everybody just wants to be seen and wants to be known by the people that they are around, by the people they surround themselves with. And so for me, the words of affirmation, the acts of service, the receiving gifts, like that was all really the quality time. Was all 4 of those were huge for me when I was really just homebound.
Okay.
And I couldn't get out of my chair. So when people would stop by and just hang out, that was great. When people would send me text messages or emails or, Facebook messengers or whatever, those made me feel seen and loved and known. People stopped by with little baskets of gifties for me. Like, that was super awesome. Like, all of those little things that people did just made me feel very special.
Uh-huh. Now, on the flip side of that, how does it make you feel because your lowest is physical touch?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like, because you're not a touchy-feely person in general anyway.
Right.
And so when, that's how I'm responding, or if, random friends oh, bring it in for a close hug. What is that like for you then?
There's a little part of panic.
Yeah.
I'm just not a touchy-feely kind of person, and I like my personal space. And it's not that I will not hug people. I'm not, super standoffish, but it's just not... It's not how I receive love, and it's not how I want to give love, because it just makes me uncomfortable.
Okay. So you talked about how when somebody responds to your acts of love, or to your love languages, you feel seen, you feel known, all of that kind of stuff. How do you feel when those are not done? When those things don't happen, on the flip side of that, how do you feel?
I mean, just the opposite of all of that. I feel forgotten. I feel just neglected, I guess. And I know that's not actually the case. I think people move on with their lives, things happen. But yeah, I think that it doesn't take a lot for those to go away, before I start feeling oh, maybe I don't really matter.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's really a good, what you just said would kind of be my answer. So with my top 2, obviously physical touch and words of affirmation, when those things happen, it's like I matter, right? It's like I'm important enough to be cared about in those ways, right? Like I'm important enough that physical touch like matters and is happening.
Right.
Or like I'm important enough for you to tell me through words of affirmation. But when those things don't happen, like I think where I normally go is that like I'm a bother, I'm too much, I'm like not wanted, I'm not loved, I'm not cared for, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like all of those things.
Like you don't matter.
100%. That's what, when you said that's what made me think that. It's like that I don't matter. And again, not true.
Right.
But that's why love languages are so important. Because me knowing that for Sherry, the things that make her feel the most loved and seen and known and appreciated and special are things like gifts and time and words and acts. Yet what I naturally want to do is physical touch. What I have to do is not make Sherry receive love the same way I do.
Right.
I actually have to change myself in order for her to feel most loved. Right? Like I have to say, it's kind of like communication. If I'm like, well, you know what? Too bad, Sherry. I communicate this way. And if you don't figure this out, like that's on you.
Right.
Right? And there are people who do that.
Right.
That it's like, well, I communicate this way and you better just like learn my way. It's like, well, first of all, you're an ass. Right?
Right.
Like quit.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, that's one of the reasons this is so important in all relationships. Like we have friends that I know their like love language are things like gifts. That are things like words of affirmation, and a text message letting them know how much I appreciate them like changes their day.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? Whereas like I could see them and give them a hug and that means nothing to them. It means the world to me, like, but means zero to them.
Right.
And so understanding the love language of the people around you helps you let them know that they're loved.
Yeah.
You know?
And that they matter.
And that they matter.
Yeah.
And they're seen and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about our constant battle in the love languages.
Yeah, and I think here's where we're going to get pretty blunt. I think Adam is naturally a selfless person. He naturally thinks of others before himself.
Okay.
I am a naturally selfish person. And it's not right. It's something that I fight against, but that's just how I am. Like it's work for me to think of other people.
We've talked about this before.
And, so it's something that I'm constantly battling. And so for things like words of affirmation, like physical touch, especially with physical touch being my lowest, it's not just naturally where my mind goes. So I want to show Adam that I love him. And we were actually talking about this. So while he was gone, I like cleaned the house. Like he came home to a very clean house. Laundry was done, like floors vacuumed, everything dusted, like everything's clean. He didn't care.
Well, keeping in mind, active service for me, 3%.
Right. So like...
But for you...
But for me, it was, like, that's, like, the 23% for me. So I'm thinking he can come home to a nice, clean house. It's going to be peaceful. It's going to be great. He's going to know that I missed him and I love him. And he commented on it. He's like, hey, thanks for picking up the house.
Yeah, the house looks
like,
great. But it didn't make me feel loved. But it didn't
matter to him. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, she really loves me. It was just like, cool, I have a clean house. And so, like, in my brain, I'm doing things that I would appreciate and that I do appreciate when he does. But, you know, that was just kind of a topic or a way that I am more selfish, really, than him. Like, because that's how I would receive love. That's how I would see that I matter. And, that's not how he receives it. So that's kind of how our relationship tends to work.
We had a friend one time, and I might have told the story on a vlog or in a podcast, who for a while, part of his job was booking concerts to come up here. And I remember having a conversation with him one time about, like, you know, because I approach when your friend books concerts, I want to be selfish and be like, hey, here's my list of my favorite bands. Can you bring them up?
Right.
And I remember him telling me one time, he said, Adam, he said, you never book concerts for yourself. You always book concerts for the market. You always book concerts for others. Like, you never book who you want to see, because who you want to see may sell 50 tickets. Like, I need to sell 5,000 tickets.
Right.
You know, so you book for the market. You never book for yourself. And so even as you were talking, I was thinking about that, because like, in some ways, I think we can approach these love languages as, what can I do for Sherry that I would appreciate? Well, here's the reality. What I would appreciate isn't going to matter at all to Sherry.
Right.
Because we're so different.
Right.
And so I can't approach it with that mentality. Mm-hmm. This is why this stuff matters, because I have to say, what do I know to be true about Sherry? Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that, like, words of affirmation or acts of service or gifts or those four main ones for her. And here's what I will say. I kind of have it easy, because 4 of them you have.
Throw a dart, you're going to hit something. Like, it's going to be great.
Unless I touch you, and then it's like, get the hell away from me. Stop.
Back away.
Back
Personal
away.
Space.
Back away. Stranger danger. Stranger danger. And so, like, 4 out of 5, and I'm going to be golden.
Right.
But like, I have to approach things, and I have to set myself aside. Mm-hmm. And say, in this situation, what is going to make Sherry feel the most loved?
And I feel like you're really good at that.
Well, and
I'm really not.
I'm not going to disagree. I do love you, but I'm not going to disagree.
No, you don't have to disagree.
Maybe it goes back to some of the Enneagram too, in that I genuinely, and I don't know how to describe this, I genuinely find joy in, like, when those around me are happy and just pleased and well taken care of. Like, that to me is, I don't know how to describe it. That to me is as good as my complete happiness, is the happiness of those around me.
Yeah.
You know, like,
but that's not me.
No, that's not you.
At all.
No, not at all. And so you're just like, forget your happiness. Like, what about me?
I mean,
how about some more gifts for me?
Right.
You know? Totally. And so I do think that that's one of the things why this matters, is that it requires the laying down of what you want and how you're wired.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the other person knowing that they're loved. It's about the other person knowing that, like, they're desired or wanted or thought of or cared for.
Right,
like,
exactly.
That's the goal in this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's harder for certain personality types.
Yeah.
Sherry, other things for us, do you have any other, like, how else has this played out? Do you have any other thoughts?
I think that it is important to know, and, you know, I think that all of this sort of works together. The Enneagram and your love languages and how you communicate, how you receive communication. I think it all just works together in tandem, because knowing my Enneagram, I know that I am very much in my head a lot. I also know that I am just kind of naturally a selfish person, that I have to make myself think of others and what will be best for others. It just doesn't come naturally to me. And so, and then, you know, I was telling Adam earlier, kind of when we were discussing this, for me, it's really hard to, because I am a perfectionist, and I am all up in my head all the time. For me, I would rather not do something at all than to do it poorly. So if a friend's love language is acts of service, I would rather do nothing than to try to do something that causes them more work because I did it wrong, or, like, I will overthink it and I will talk myself out of it.
If their love language is gifts and you're afraid that you haven't found a perfect gift, you just won't buy a gift.
I just won't buy a gift.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, because I will talk myself out of it.
Very interesting.
Right, because I would just rather give no gift at all, or just, like, here's a card, happy birthday, than to get a gift that they're like, great, thanks, this sucks. Like,
whereas I'll buy 10 gifts and hope that one of them hits.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, here's your basket of gifts, I love you. Can I please have a hug? Hold me. Hold me. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I do think that it's interesting to watch how this plays out differently, because I remember we were in Miami with Desi and Ida. And the Latin culture is a very physical contact culture. And I'm just like, oh, thank God. Like, everywhere I went, it's like people touch your shoulder, people touch your arm, people give you hugs, people, like, you know what I mean? Like,
even like our server, like at one of the restaurants, it's like hand on the shoulder, like leaning in. And I was just like, Bubble, like, back up.
And I'm just like,
this is my personal space, dude. Like,
and I'm just like, bro, you want to hold hands?
I know.
Like,
squeeze on in here. We can snuggle.
Snuggle on in. You want to hop on up on the old knee and take my order? Right? Like, that's just me. Like, I just am that way.
Yeah. And I am just not.
Completely. And so in our relationship,
yeah,
this has been, and again, you guys remember when you watch YouTube videos, you guys see an edited version of the highlight reel that we decide to show you.
Right.
Keep that in mind, right? Our channel is called LeggLife, and we really do try to show you a true representation of our life, our values, the things we do, the things we enjoy. We really try to not put on a show for you. But at the end of the day, what you see is an edited version of our reality. And you don't see the times when this kind of thing.
Right, when I make Adam feel like he doesn't matter because I can't handle physical touch.
Yeah, that's
because
exactly
that
right.
is his huge, like, that's his biggest.
Oh, by far.
And I am just like, please don't touch me.
Yeah.
Like, and I never want him to feel like he doesn't matter because he absolutely does. But we have gone around and around and around for 16 years.
For 16 years, yeah.
Because I am so anti-physical touch, and he is like, that's his biggest thing.
Yeah,
and
without it, I want to die.
Right.
Like, and that's like that's just the truth. Like, without it, I feel like I completely don't matter and am not, like, you could give me a pile of gifts every day and it would literally mean nothing to me. Right. As opposed if I didn't have that. Like, that to me is the one thing that makes me feel like seen and known and valued. And yet for Sherry, it's the one thing that, like, you want nothing to do with.
Right, yeah.
And so it's like, yeah.
It's not great.
Figure that out every frickin' day of your life.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I think that's the thing. That's why this is important to remember, is that these love languages aren't like a one-time act. It's not like, okay, well, it's March, so let's check back in on our annual love language.
Right.
Like, this is stuff that
I held your hand last week. What more do you need? Like...
Yeah, what's the problem? Right? This is a daily, a multiple time a day. And you know what I mean? Like, this is an ongoing thing. This is, do the people around you feel seen and loved and known and cared for and valued? You want the answer to be yes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you want the answer to be yes. You want, your friends to know where they stand with you. You want your friends to know that that you love them, and that and here's what I'll say, you love them enough to love them the way they need to be loved.
Yeah.
Because I can say, you know what, I really love you. But that love takes on a whole new form when I'm willing to do the things for you that make you feel the most loved and seen.
Yeah.
Even when that's not naturally how I'm wired.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is like, holy crap. Like, that's love.
Right.
So yeah, this has been, the love languages for us have been, just being honest, a constant battle because we are so different.
Yeah.
And I would actually encourage people out there, if you're, maybe you're early on in a relationship, or you're just starting, like, dating, or like you have hopes of being engaged or married one day, I think that this is an important conversation to have. Now, here's what I'll say. I don't think this has to be a deal breaker, but I do think you need to know that if you are dramatically different, like, this is going to be a battle.
It's going to be a battle, and I think that, kind of like when you were reading what they each mean and then how you can do them wrong, if you are always critical, like, the person who really just needs words of affirmation to feel loved is going to feel the most unloved.
Yes.
And so, like, just kind of know things about yourself. If you are naturally a critical person, I am a very selfish person naturally. And so I know that I have to change myself. I have to really, really try to give Adam what he needs, because he does matter to me and I want him to always feel like he matters to me. But it's hard for me to do.
Yeah, you don't naturally think that.
No.
And so one of the things that I do, because Sherry does have some love languages that aren't necessarily naturally how I'm bent, is I actually have to sit down and like be intentional and say, okay, like what can I do that would make Sherry feel loved? I remember a trip I went on, and I'm trying to remember what trip it was because I was gone a long time. Gosh, I don't remember what trip it was. I feel like I was gone for like 10 days or 2 weeks. And I was trying to think of what I could do for you to help you feel loved while I was away. And what I came up with, knowing that you are like, you love gifts and words, I was like, how can I combine those things? What I did is I wrote you and I left you a stack of notes.
This was when you did your road trip.
That's what it was. It was my road trip.
Yep.
And I left you a stack of notes that I hand wrote, a different note for every single day when I was gone for you to open.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the reality. That took more time and brain power and creativity than I wanted to put towards it. Honestly, calling FTD and having one bouquet of flowers delivered would have been much easier.
Right.
There's a lot of things about that, to me, that was an inconvenience, but it didn't matter because I knew how it would make Sherry feel.
And I still have them.
And you still have them. And the reality is you always will.
Yeah.
And that was the goal.
Right.
It didn't matter what an inconvenience it was for me. It didn't matter that it was a pain. It didn't matter there was another option. It didn't matter. Nothing else mattered. It mattered that in that moment, every single day while I was away, in that point in time, you would open a letter and you'd read it and you would know that you were seen and you were loved.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that for a lot of us, we have to, in some ways, retrain ourselves.
Yeah.
To not say, well, this is what I would like.
Right.
The question is, well, what would she like? What would he like? What would my friend like? What would that person like? In the moment, how are they going to feel loved? How are they going to feel seen and known? Because ultimately, guys, that's the goal. That's the goal.
And it's, I think like what we said, I think it's easier for others than some others. It's just, but I still want all of the people in my life to know that I love them and that they are valued. And so learning how they receive that is so important, I think.
I think so too. And I think it's important to remember, and this touches on something you mentioned earlier about how if you don't get it right or you don't get it perfect, you don't want to do it at all. Mm-hmm. Here's what I would say. Making an attempt is better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, like, we're so different on physical touch. Anything that was attempted or tried is better than absolutely nothing.
Right.
Right? Because nothing makes you feel unseen, unloved, unknown, uncared for, all of that stuff. Like, any attempt, like we were talking earlier, that we have this saying that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly.
Right.
Like, do something. Do something.
And, like, in my head, I know that. But I just get so in my head and I just in circles, and I will talk myself out of it because I know that I'm just going to fail and then they're going to hate it. And then it's just going to end up being worse than if I had just done nothing at all, which is not actually true. Yeah, no. But that's where my brain goes.
Well, I think that's why these conversations are important, because to say like, hey, like, I know that you're naturally not wired that way. Right. Mm-hmm. But for you to say, you know what, like, this isn't like, I'm trying. You know what I mean? Like, I want to get better at
Taylor
this.
song, this is me trying. Like, I'm trying.
Like, I want to get better at this because I know that you need me to be better at this.
Yes.
You know, and so I think that in itself is a big deal.
Yeah.
So friends, want to know, are you familiar with 5 love languages? Is this something you use? Is this something you talk about? Is this something you find easy to do? Mm-hmm. And remember, we kind of have this conversation over on our YouTube page. Over on the LeggLife YouTube channel, there is a tab that says Community tab. We put up a graphic that basically just like is the discussion post for this week.
Yep.
Around this topic. And so do you have questions? Do you have comments? Were there things that we talked about on here? Have we ruined the LeggLife magic? You guys thought we were perfect and we never had any issues. And now it's just like,
It's just actually that Adam is perfect and Sherry's really not.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, whatever. But I think, I don't know, I think it's helpful for you guys to like get to hear and know that like this is literally a daily battle for us.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so this is not an easy thing. This is not, it takes work.
It does. But it's worth it. I mean, because, I value Adam, I value our marriage. And so it's worth it to just keep trying to get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So friends, head over there to YouTube and comment on this.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts. I think that this was a good second podcast. We're going to start to get into some more, I don't want to say practical relationships, but some other relationship topics in future weeks.
Kind of a little deeper.
A little bit deeper. Yeah. I think it was important to me that we started with communication and love languages first because to me, both of these are so similar in that they're understanding the person you're with. Again, not just a romantic person.
Right.
You're understanding the people that you spend time with, the people that you're around, your family, your friends, all of that kind of stuff. So that you can better care for them, love them, better just communicate with them, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we started with these two. I
am too. And I think that they kind of feed into the later topics.
I think so too. Yeah, they feed into where we're going. So, again, you guys, we still have 3 more podcasts this month.
Woot.
Where we're going to talk more about lots of relationship topics. We love you guys. Thanks for listening to us rant about this.
Yeah, head over to that community page. We'd love to engage with you guys and just kind of continue the discussion.
I'm also curious to know, what is your top and what is your bottom one?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know what is your number 1 love language and what is your last one. I'm very curious to see if more people are like you, where there's like an even balance, or if more people are like me, where it's like these gigantic spike and then like a literal valley of the shadow of death.
Right.
Like to me is like acts of service. It was so funny. Sorry, little thing. Talking about like me coming home. It was so funny because like, again, I complimented. I'm like, oh, the house looked great. You did a great job. And you were like so proud of that. And in my mind, I was just like, well, okay,
great.
Like, great. I mean,
cool.
So you didn't want to live like a slob. What's the big deal?
Like, and I was just like, look what a good wife I am. He's gonna feel so valued.
Like, I would rather you made out with me at the door when I got home. Let's be very honest. So, friends. All right, guys, we love you. We'll see you next week on the next LeggLife podcast.